We are. Welcome,
well,
everyone.
I was going to say something.
My goodness.
Yeah.
Probably best.
I'm
Yeah.
glad you told me because
to
that would have
day
been bad.
5 of
Wow, we're
the
punchy.
Hang on. No,
Microsoft
there we
Ignite
go.
live webcast. Thank you all for joining us today. This is our last and final day. I think we're all well exhausted.
We're pretty
coming into the
tired.
week. What's with the sunglasses, dude? Wow, the resolution isn't that high. They can't actually see how bloodshot they are.
He's just cool. That's all there is.
Is that what it
He
is?
wears his sunglasses at night.
Do you know how Florida it is outside? I am
It's pretty
not
Florida.
cool.
He's
That
Florida,
is-
yeah.
It is. So we've had a full week of Ignite goodness. We're wrapping up today. I am joined by my fellow co-conspirators, Jason Himmelstein and Mr. John White,
Hello there.
who, if you were watching yesterday, popped in and video bombed us during yesterday's webcast. So we'll make sure they get their own dedicated time to talk today, and believe me, they will talk. So a few housekeeping things as usual before we get started. If you would like to ask these fine gentlemen a question, please post it into the public chat, and they will be happy to respond to you. You may not like the answer, but respond they will.
I won't.
The slides are available under the handouts section, so you can grab those and pull them down for the discussion that we're having today. We're not really structured. We just have some talking points we're going to wander through and see where the conversation takes us as we go forward. The videos have been posted. I am the only one of our presenter group here today. Videos have been posted already. I'll show you the links here in a moment, but of course we want to thank our sponsors, BinaryWave and Training Plus, for bringing this webcast series to you, and a shout out momentarily to Mr. John White's company, UnlimitedViz, makers of TyGraph.
Thank you very much.
Couple of 10 seconds on UnlimitedViz.
Yeah, UnlimitedViz, we make the software is called TyGraph, and that's our line. You've seen the free version for Ignite, monitoring the tweets, etc. We have the session browser. By the way, session browser, great way to navigate the video content that they've published since the sessions have been on.
Really?
Yeah, because every session has the link right directly to the tech community post, which has the video embedded in it. I was playing with that this morning. What I'm going to be using to catch up on all the sessions that I missed this week.
Yeah,
I was busy doing other stuff.
Zero.
But our meat and potatoes is analytics for Office 365. So if you want in-depth, and I mean in-depth, down to the second, what's going on within your tenant for SharePoint, for OneDrive, for Yammer, or for Teams, TyGraph for any of those products is what you're looking for.
Fantastic. All right. So let's get back a slide here for the videos. I've been trying to post all the videos the day after they go live. So this one should be up. I'll try and get to it as soon as it finishes rendering later today, if possible. If not, we'll get it up over the weekend. Send you all out an email to that. You can go to our channel on BigMarker to see all of our previous webcasts, as well as our YouTube channel that we are now posting all of the videos to. And you can catch up on anything you might have missed this week. And I saw we've already got quite a few people going out and looking at those videos, so that's great. So before we actually get into some of our content here, I'll just leave this slide up. But what's your feedback from the week? What's your overall impression? What highlights you take away from the week?
Best Ignite yet.
Really?
Yes, by far. I was rather highly critical of the first three, especially the Atlanta and Chicago ones. They were just painful.
Mm-hmm.
Last year got a lot better. And this year, I was very impressed with what they did. The show floor flowed very nicely. I think there were definitely things that deserve some rethought. The 20-minute, 45-minute, 75-minute sessions made it kind of janky for people. And it made it hard. Trying to do a 45-minute deep technical presentation is
really hard.
Not enough time. But we managed to get through it, and felt really good about what we did. We just had to rush. And the big complaint I have is always the food. It's always going to be the food. I remember the Tech Ed days of hot lunches.
Oh, when the food was good.
When the food was good. And now prepackaged food that's been packaged 5 days before, I just can't do it. So I've been eating in the beeline.
Yeah.
So,
me too.
I'd absolutely echo everything Jason said, for a change, I suppose. But no, I totally.
They're agreeing, folks. This is live and captured on camera.
Yes.
I totally agree with all that. I think they nailed the logistics this year. It was really seamless. I mean, the whole Hyatt, the building, it was one big loop. It was easy to get where you needed to go and when you needed to go. There seemed to be some thought put into the scheduling. And I'm just going to add, they did the new format for the keynote at the beginning of the week. And I really liked it and I didn't think I would. I thought, this might be a little dodgy. I wound up watching it from my room because there was only 3,000 people who could get in the main area, which is actually right behind where we are right now. And so I didn't try, but man, it flowed well. It had an energy to it that other keynote systems
I like the
don't
cutaways to the show floor for the demos and stuff.
Great.
That was good.
And finally, the content was nowhere near as fluffy as it has been in previous years. There's no bringing out the chair to talk to the CEO of somebody, which just bores me to tears. I don't know. I may be the only one there, but there was not that it lacked customer stories. The customer stories were there, but they were presented in such a way that they were relevant.
And they kept them really short and pithy.
Yeah, exactly that. Yep. So all in all, I certainly agree it's the best event so far.
I question some of the customer stories because they're bringing out customer stories for things that don't really exist yet.
Well, there's
that one. Yeah. That's a little. The one that I'm excited for Cortex. I think Cortex is going to be really neat. I think it's going to be great. It's something we definitely need. But the customer story on something that is in such limited private preview that they gave no detail, no info, nothing. Like Simon a lot. I want to see the full video. Yeah. Don't give me a quick teaser on that where there's nothing in it that actually tells me anything. There were a couple that were like that. That was my only complaint with it. But I believe this time around a lot better than it's been in the past. And I feel like because it got better from last year that they're on a trajectory now of continuing to do that. So.
And I have one concern, and it might be at a bit of an embarrassment of Rich's concern. But we've seen all this new stuff. We saw Cortex. We saw Arc, which I think is a big deal. We see Synapse. We see all this new stuff that's coming. It looks great. It's well designed, and we have absolutely no idea how much it's going to cost. We don't have any sense of the licensing. We don't have any sense of the licensing model or what the numbers are. And I'm sorry, but that can make or break a product rollout. I'm not going to get into the deal, but very recently we invested a ton of money in a particular technology that we just can't use because the licensing model just plain simply doesn't work. And we don't know about it until the product is released. Right. I think I'm not complaining with the decisions that are made.
Come on. That is not true. It's not when it's released. It's a year and a half later.
Well, there's that when it changes. I'm not even getting into that.
That's the bigger issue is that they do this 3 times.
Yeah, well, some product lines do, but in general, I want to figure out how to put a push out there. Let's get these guys. I'm not arguing with the decisions that are made. I might argue with them, but that's not my point here. We should know earlier in the cycle what those plans are, and I don't think there's any reason we shouldn't. I mean, I think it's a bit of we want to get you excited. It's give you a little bit of heroin.
I think they often forget that a lot of these products are targeted to the enterprise, and if you don't get in the budget cycle, you're not getting the purchase. Well, right? And now they can't onboard it for another year because you didn't give them some advance notice of how to do that. So I would have to agree with that. Yeah, absolutely. I would give feedback on the event, but I have absolutely none because I haven't done anything but do these webcasts and go back to the hotel.
Favorite thing of the entire conference, though, and I didn't get to actually take part. I just got to go watch a little bit of it. The puppy pen.
Oh, it's awesome.
Oh, puppy pen.
That was just brilliant.
They probably can't see. We mentioned it the other day. Probably can't see it, but on the very corner of your screen map, able to see a white picket fence. They have companion animals here, and they got dogs over there. And you just walk in and go pet the dogs and hang out.
Big fluffy, happy puppies.
There was a unicorn the other day.
Oh yeah, but no, I thought that was just
that was really very late in the bar one night, John.
Yeah.
Oh right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, let's talk a little bit of content here. So let me just bring up to speed. This is a marketing conference. It's targeted primarily at IT pros and end users. You are not going to get much developer content here, and that we all expect that. That's what Build is for. That's where all the developer announcements are made, as well as for the SharePoint focus folks at SPC. But we did get some developer content things we'd be interested in. Now on the Azure side, I noticed there was a lot more deep dive developer stuff that they had that they were going through there. But So just off the top of my list, the things that were announced, obviously the fluid framework, we're going to hear a lot about this going forward as we sort of change the way we build components to make them universal across the stack. So sort of build once and it runs everywhere.
And just to jump in there, we actually, the new Yammer stuff that's been announced is using the new fluid framework. It's the first product we're seeing in the stack that's using it.
Yeah, it is. So that will be interesting to see how developers integrate that in and how they use it. It changes the way you think about how you're building components because you have to think about all that communication back and forth and all the webhooks and stuff that are happening.
I remember Ole.
Do you remember MSMQ?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. There's also now a new program for certifying applications that go into this new admin center for deploying apps. It's not really the store, but it kind of is the store where you have to go through a certification process to deploy those.
Is that going to be quick and easier?
They never made it quick and easy before, so why should they change now?
Just wondering.
Well, we can only hope. A whole new set of Graph API connectors. There's actually, I highly recommend going to the Graph blog and page where they talk about all the announcements. There's a bunch of Graph stuff that they've done, which is really cool.
Module for Graph now too.
There is, yeah. So there's some really good stuff there. Look up Jeremy Thake's session that he did on the Graph announcements, and there's a couple others. So you want to check out those videos. A bunch of Graph extensions for Teams now. It's becoming a first-class citizen in the stack. So if you're building things that need to integrate with Teams, you have those extensions now. And something that's not on the list because they sort of mentioned it and then didn't give any details and sort of haven't. So I talked to Vessel last night to find out what I could and couldn't say about this. And it's still in progress, but the concept is that the SharePoint framework development model will be extended to use across the platform, so that when you're creating a component, instead of it just being an SPFX component, it's now a Microsoft 365 component.
Sweet.
And that's what they're calling them, M365 components. And so instead of doing SPFX and picking teams, you can now pick teams as what you're developing. This is my understanding, and I could have it completely wrong. But from what I've heard announced, that's the idea, is to make it unified so that we're using that model. It's sort of proven itself out now. And we'll be able to, from the Yeoman generator, run and create components for across the stack. So more information coming on that. There was a developer call on the 5th. So from Tuesday, look up the SPFX community dev call where Waldeck and Vessel were talking about some of this stuff. So you can go there and get more details. But that should be really cool and something to look for. Let's talk some PowerBI. Woo-hoo! Lots of announcements this week on PowerBI. Let's start with some of the simple ones. These are sort of must-have stuff, right, that they had to do around the data protection pieces.
So classification and labels. This one, the cool thing about this is they didn't go roll their own. That was the big thing that we were excited about when we heard about this. Was we heard, oh, we're going to do classification and table labels. And we went, oh, another one. No. We're actually going to use the same one that Microsoft 365 is using.
It's Cloud App Security.
Yeah.
Yep.
Really? That was a good decision. we went and patted him on the back, gave big hugs. Like, please, more of this. This is great because PowerBI, like so many other products that are not directly part of the M365 world or Office 365 world, tend to go roll their own for a lot of things because their stuff is very different, but they've started to do a lot more integration. A lot more things are coming together, and it's really hotness that they're doing that. A bunch of other stuff. So to be fair, the announcements that they made here, very, very little in comparison with some of the other times that they make announcements. Yeah. Like fewer things. So we didn't have a whole lot of Power BI here, and part of the reason why, past Summit's going on at the same time. So there's a bunch of stuff that got announced here, and Arun and Amir did a great keynote, technical keynote on it. But they're all things that they had already talked about coming and doing. A lot of this is coming to GA, which is really great. So they use this opportunity in this moment to push out a bunch of new stuff. And they've already said that next week we'll get the next version of the desktop drop. They've said that publicly, so we can actually repeat it.
And we were actually given permission to show it this week, too.
Yes. So what's really great about that is there's an opt-in for using the Office ribbon.
Oh, really?
They are
actual
changing,
Office ribbon.
They are
ribbon,
ribbon
their own
Power
ribbon.
BI desktop. That's the big announcement that isn't in any of these announcements because they've already said they were going to do it. They weren't ready to roll it this week. So that's why there's a disparity. So keep an eye out for next Tuesday. Is that when they said?
Think
somewhere
so,
between
but
Tuesday and Thursday. It's always a tea day.
Okay.
They like tea. You'd think they would do it on Monday because it's M. And never mind. That's a really bad Power BI joke. Anyway, but the
Power BI dad joke.
Yeah, well, yeah. But that's part of the big announcement. And so the fact that they're following through, they decided to stop doing their own ribbon. They're taking the Power BI, taking the Office ribbon, which also means that they get to plug into the thesaurus and synonyms and all of those.
That's a big deal. That one.
That's
one of
the announcements you're going to get to here. We'll get to in a few minutes. Takes advantage of that, but we're starting to see these things come closer together.
Oh, that can only be a good thing.
Yeah, it's a big focus of theirs. One of the big things we sat down and interviewed Arun Ulag, who's the GM of Power BI. So if you want to hear that interview, we dropped that just the other day. It's episode 124 on bifocal.show.
Now, see, I forgot to put that slide, and I should have.
That's all right.
If you will go back to our Power BI webcast from 2 months ago,
I think so.
2 months ago, we have all the bifocal links in there where John and Jason joined us there. So I missed that one. Thank you.
That's okay. But so you can hear all about what he thinks is important, and the big thing there is trust. They're focused on trust, and that's where this classification label stuff really comes.
It's the enterprise security,
And the thing I didn't bother to get to him was, it's that's important, but what you're doing right now,
is that right? Bifocal.show.
You got it. What we're seeing and what really has me excited at this point is we're getting pictures taken. Yay!
Heather Newman is taking our picture.
What we're seeing right now is, hey, it's Heather. Hi. We're seeing Heather now.
Hi. So we're broadcasting live on the webcast, and if you come just right around here, you can show your beautiful face and just wave at everybody.
Community reporter Heather Newman.
Wow. There we are. Our very own community reporter has jumped in to join us.
What's up, everybody? Hi, fellas.
How you doing?
I'm so good.
So we're talking Power BI.
Sweet.
Your favorite subject, I know.
I love Power BI. It's very near and dear to my heart and my fingertips. Actually,
very good.
Yeah.
So before we go further into the announcements, we've got the question that always comes up. We're talking about Power BI, and that is it online only, or can we also use it on-prem? For that millionth time, would you like to answer that question?
Sure. So Power BI, the service, is online. Power BI, what we would call Power BI reports, PBIX files, those things you build with Power BI desktop and deploy them, those reports can be run on-prem with a product called Power BI Report Server. What is Power BI Report Server? Power BI Report Server is best to think of as SQL Server reporting services plus the ability to render these files, essentially. And it is a different product. It has a different release schedule, but it is a superset of SSRS. So we just got a drop of SSRS this month with SQL 2019, and it releases with SQL. Power BI Report Server has a 3 times yearly release schedule.
Okay.
So you can update your on-premises. What you don't get with that are things like Power BI dashboards, which is no great loss in my opinion. But there are other features that are not available in the service that you. I just lost my train. There are features available in the service that are not a part of Power BI Report. So it's not the same thing. But I do want to say Power BI Desktop is not Power BI on-prem. Power BI Desktop is a design client to build these reports that can run in the cloud in the Power BI service and on premises with Power BI reports.
So if I have the story straight, if you're running SSRS now in SharePoint 2016, you're looking to migrate. Obviously, we don't have that service anymore in integrated mode.
We don't have integrated mode.
Integrated
That's
mode. There's still native mode.
That's right, and we have a web part that you can use that.
Horrible web part that blows up your farm.
But there's a new one. There's a new one.
Yeah.
There's a new native mode web part.
So it's going to blow up bigger now. Fantastic.
It does not blow up the farm. What it does, it requires Kerberos.
The path forward is you would rebuild all your reports as Power BI reports, and then you can use the Power BI server for your on-premises needs. Is that
I
right?
would not do that. I would take a look at my reports and see what reports are analytical in nature. Those things that have got drill throughs or sub reports or things that are meant for people to interact with, those are candidates for conversion.
Okay.
Those reports you've built that you run on a weekly, monthly, whatever schedule with the, bar lines, etc. Leave them as RDL files and let them render in Power BI report server, because it's basically the native mode of SSRS.
Okay.
And you will embed in SharePoint if it's on premises one way and online a different way.
So here's an easy
We
way
just
to
went
think
deep.
of it. Yeah, you went super deep.
I know, I was like,
I'm gonna pull it back and go, let's keep. The gist of Power BI Report Server, and there are a couple of different ways you license Power BI Report Server. Number one is you have to have dedicated capacity in Power BI, the service,
Okay.
or SQL Server Enterprise Edition with software assurance.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, you have licensing models for each one. They follow the core model of whatever you have. If you have a P3 in the service, then you have that number of cores to be able to run on-prem.
I see.
If you have SQL Server Enterprise Edition with SA for on-prem, and you've got 16 cores, you have 16 cores of availability to run on-prem for Power BI Report Server. Now, the way that I think about it is 80% of what you get in the service, you get on-prem. Okay, so you can render out all the RDLs, you can render out all the PBIX files, you can do all of those cool things. You can do things on a scheduled basis. There's lots of core functionality that you get. Some of the super whiz-bang stuff, that like the AutoML stuff that we'll talk about here in a few minutes, and all of those things, not so much on prem. You're going to need that in the service if you want that.
Okay.
But the core functionality, the core stuff, if you're trying to stay on-prem, you've sort of abandoned the idea of going to the super cool brand new thing right away.
Sure.
That's okay. You've got what you need for the most part in Power BI.
So I'm going to ungeek us just for a second. I'm going to come back to that. But since we have
one more
Heather
guy.
here,
Yay.
I want to get your community reporter here. What has been your experience at Ignite this week? Give me the off the top of your head.
Open source has been a big word that I keep hearing, is that just we're opening things up more and more and more with Project Cortex, and just that like people are like, well, we're opening things up more. We're allowing people to use AI and to get deeper in as far as being citizen developers. So there's a lot of talk about that. The Power Platform, Power Addicts, those were, a lot of those folks have been just like, rah, so I think it's just like, we're continuing to be open for business, and we want to do business with more and more people and more platforms, and let's do that, and move the needle forward so that we're just making better productivity for our customers and more opportunities for our partners. To me, that was the big thing. And then just I've liked seeing the human side of people here this week. There's a lot of, there's a great technical talks and features and all of that, but there's been a lot of talk about getting to know people on a human level. And to me, that married to all this amazing tech and excitement around opening things up, I think we're not just opening our, ones and zeros, but we're opening our hearts a little bit more. And I love that, so to me, that's been this week.
Do I need to enter a question online if I want to ask Heather a question? Or can I,
You can just ask her. Yeah, okay. It's okay. Yeah.
I just want to know, you got to do all these cool interviews. What was your favorite interview that you had? What was the thing
That's
that
not
you
fair.
really, not just that favorite moment of the thing? And
Let
somebody's going
me
to go
put her
back
on the
and
spot
watch
a
it.
little further.
I know. Gosh.
It's not about the
No,
person,
I got
but just
you. Okay.
like something that you just walked away and you went, oh, that was cool.
I think the whole thing was an amazing experience. First, just because it's so wonderfully produced by brilliant people who are sports people and news people and all of that. So just the level of professionalism of them is so great, and so raises your game, and you're just taken care of by an amazing group of people. Like, not a shocker, but it was super cool. I think it was a lot of the little moments of just like having to vamp, which my theater degree came back to me in spades this week. I was like,
I can't imagine you just improvising and riffing on the spot, Heather. That's so out of character for you.
It was kind of funny. So I think there was, just talking with Julia White and having to, they were like, they do this, which means, stretch
it out, yeah.
And so it was like, because you're babbling live stuff, and things are not set up or need to move or whatever. And so we just chatted, you know, I know her fairly well. And so we just kept talking, you know, and the guys were like, do you know her? And I was like, yeah. And they were like, oh, okay. But it was just one of those where we were just talking about stuff, you know, which was super cool. So I really enjoyed that. And, you know, just Sonia sitting on the swings and just having that chat with her was hilarious. You know, we're like, I felt like I was in my grandparents' backyard in Michigan when I was a kid because we had swings and we were just like, doodle doo, you know. And I think to me it was the first moment because I got to open the show, the pre-show, and I was handed a microphone. We didn't rehearse. And they were
just before the keynote when everyone was tuning in and waiting.
God. Yeah, it was crazy. And then I was just like, they were like, okay, now big energy, you know. And I was like, you don't know me very well. And I was like, okay, you know. And you know, it's like
my dial only goes from 10 to 11.
Yeah, I know. I was at 18, you know, and I was like, yeah. And they had just done what they call the God mic in here when they're like, everybody, the hub is open, because they're telling everybody that we're open, you know? So the volume was jacked up. I don't know if the volume was always at that level, but when I said, good morning, the entire hub boomed with my God voice, you know, like voice. And it was just, and it scared me. And I think it scared my crew. Like everybody in the entire thing was like, ah, you know what I mean? And I was like, I stood there for a second. I was like, holy cats. And there's a delay, right? So it was like, and I was just like, are we, is everything okay? You know what I mean? Like I was like, was that bad? And I was like, my producer was like, she's like, you're okay. And I was like, okay. I was like, all right. And then I just went on, but I was just like, you know, but they were like, yeah, Al Roker would have thrown a fit about that. They were like, that was loud, and it was loud. And I was like, okay, you know, but that was just fun. And I was such an honor to do that. And it's been fun. The reporters are amazing too, because it's like there's a couple of them that never been to Ignite before or never done anything like this before, you know. And so it was cool to have that this year where they did auditions and picked us out of, you know, 120 people, and everybody had to send an audition tape and all of that. And I just think the perspectives, and I really have to say, I'll give a shout out to the event team and, you know, Bob Bajan, the GM, trying that roving keynote.
We were talking about that earlier. We loved it.
Yeah, it's like, for me, my theater brain, that's a great, it's experiential theater. You know, people have done it. Road was a play by Jim Cartwright that they did that, where you would, you know, go to different places and watch a play. You know, they do that a lot in New York. Sleep No More, you know, is like that, where you are putting a mask on and you're entering the space and experiencing a piece of theater like that. And this is, I think it's been talked about for a while, but this was the first really like fleshing it out and making it happen. And I loved it. From my theater geek in me. And, you know, Bob is actually, he's a theater guy too, agency theater guy before Microsoft. And I really have to say that super cool. You know, did you love it? I really loved it.
We liked it. Yeah.
Not only it was effective. I thought it was effective.
I did too. It breaks things up instead of just somebody sitting there and like talking at you the whole time. And, you know, I mean, don't get me wrong. The keynotes over the years are massive and beautiful. And it's like the Super Bowl and all of that. You're like, you know, but I don't know.
But
I thought it was different.
They're over rehearsed a lot of times. And what I liked was it was live without a net. Yes. Right. So there were a couple of stumbles and fumbles as people trying to deliver all that stuff. But I like it. It means you're actually seeing it happening as it goes down.
Yeah. And they didn't trip it up. I mean, it was part of the show. It was as opposed to someone on stage that's super well rehearsed. Yeah. When there's a stumble, there's a bit of a that didn't happen.
Yeah.
You know,
it wasn't. You know, I mean, it's like sometimes, like I've been on stage and I have a big giant wig. It fell off. What do? You don't stop the play and go, excuse me, everybody, my wig fell off. Let me fix this. Oh, my God. You don't do that. You're like, okay, my wig fell off. Let's rock this out. It's like, I almost swore. Rock this out. You know what I mean? And you just keep going, because that's why people love live theater. That's why we love going to sports. That's why we love doing things. Music. That's why we're here in person. We love that connection, you know? And I loved it. I loved being able to go remote with people and do that kind of stuff. And I really enjoyed the keynote that way too. I thought it was awesome. And so conceptually, I was like, rock on.
Well, that's fantastic. So we are going to jump back into our Power BI content for those of you who
were thanks for letting me.
But thank you for jumping in with us. We did just sort of Shepherd's Crook
well, I
you
was
in
just
here
gonna
as you
take
walk
photos of you
by.
in the podcast center. I was like, I got you some photos.
We
fellas.
took videos of you.
I know. Oh my goodness. Oh my god. I'm like, I've been jumping up and down over here. So anyway, well, I'm gonna
But
go
thank
get
you
some
for
lunch.
dropping in.
All right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming
Awesome.
in.
All
I
right.
adore
We'll see
all
you.
of you. So safe travels.
All
Bye,
right,
everybody.
thanks. So let's jump back into some of our announcements here and cover things like, this is a big one, data lineage that they've announced. Talk me through this.
So data lineage, it's a view. And it's something that we've had in data flows for a little while. You could switch the way you're looking at the list. So if you've worked with Power BI in the past, you can look at your workspace and you have the various tabs. You've got dashboards, reports, etc. And it's in a list format, right? One ordered by alphabetically. You can switch it to the data lineage view, and it shows you how these things are connected. So a dashboard can connect to multiple report elements, things from a report. It will show you the dashboard and all of the reports. And a data set can feed multiple reports. So when you deploy to Power BI, a report has a data set in it, but you can connect different reports to it. And a given report may have multiple sources of data. So you can see all of that stuff in a line. That's basically what it gives you a more holistic view.
Because you do easily get lost in
Yeah.
what connect to what and how did this fit and where is this piece of data coming from?
So
And if I delete this, what am I going to break?
I'll give you an example. I used it as soon as it came out. I used it because I had 3 reports sitting in my workspace for this silly fitness thing I've been doing, and I built out these reports against the same data set, thinking, hey, that some of this isn't connected, but I couldn't figure out, and I didn't have time to go unravel which thing is connected to which. I flipped it to data lineage and I went, oh, if I delete that, I'm going to break that and that. Let me go fix it, ding, 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 and I was done, like 45 seconds. And I was able to get rid of stuff that didn't need to be there anymore. It was fantastic.
As we get more enterprise features in here and we get more connectivity as opposed to everything being bundled in the same object, this matters more.
Okay.
This becomes something that helps you as you're looking at turning a workspace into an app.
Okay.
Especially.
So this is more of a administrative design kind of feature or visibility into the back end of it. Management.
Yep.
Okay.
The other side of it
Makes
is
it more maintainable.
Yeah, being able to see where something isn't refreshing as well, because it actually shows you, and you have the ability to go click on it and say, just go refresh this element of things, and that will fix some of the problems that you may be having with your data.
Okay.
So if you have
can
5
you
or
see
6
it
data
fire down the
sources-
chain to see
Yeah,
if you're
you
fresh?
can see how they're connected. Yeah, exactly. And as we get into things like certified data sets, you can have a look. Do I trust this report? Oh, it's connected to a certified data set. Therefore, yes, I do. Right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
unlocks a lot of stuff.
Interesting stuff. Okay. I know you're excited about this large data models.
Yeah. The reason I'm particularly interested. So first of all, this is a premium capacity feature, or a dedicated capacity feature. So it means in the shared capacity, we're still going to be living in our 1 gigabyte limits.
Okay.
In premium or shared or dedicated capacity, we've had a 10 gigabyte limit up until now.
And that's where you're buying a certain amount of storage, compute, what have you.
You're basically buying a VM.
Okay.
Is what you're buying, and how big is that VM? But the data models within it, we're always constrained still to 10 gigabytes.
Okay.
Right now we can go up to, I think it's 400 gigabytes is the number. That's probably what the image says.
It does.
I can read
Yes.
it from
400 gig.
and it's really just the capacity of possible machine, and that's where that is right now. And what that means is, with one more feature, we talked to Arun the other day about this specifically, is when we get, without getting into the technical details, when we get the ability to read and write through the XML-A endpoint, which means we can connect to the back end with all of the same tools we would use with analysis services, that we really have, if we have a Power BI model deployed or data set deployed, we have no real need for analysis services in Azure anymore.
Okay.
It has all of the features that Azure Analysis Services has, plus some. So now we can start to consolidate down our tools. Power BI becomes not only a tool that helps us very quickly and easily build data models, but we can trust from an IT standpoint to do everything for us.
Right.
It is analysis
But
service
that
behind the
you'd be
scenes.
very constrained in trying to do that in a 10 gig model, obviously.
You would
So
obviously.
the reality of it is that a 10 gig model is still highly compressed.
Oh, it's yes.
You're getting a terabyte worth of data or so inside of a 10 gig model in reality. So take that out to 400 gigs in the model.
Wow.
You're talking about trillions and
lots
trillions
of
and trillions of rows worth of data, being able to be inside of a 400 gig model, I mean, it's massive.
It matches the scalability of analysis service, Azure analysis services.
Wow,
Now,
cool.
the key thing is you still have to have enough memory to unpack that, right?
I never
you're
said it was going to be cheap.
Yeah. So you're dealing in.
This does sound expensive.
Yeah. It is
My
a
comment
truly
earlier.
enterprise but premium feature.
It's exactly.
Okay.
You're gonna have to have a big enough capacity to support it.
I thought this was one of the coolest things during the keynote. My two favorites were Azure Arc and Azure Synapse that were announced,
Me too.
and I loved during the keynote when they did the comparison with the Google BigQuery and just knocked its pants off. That was fantastic. So talk me through Azure Synapse. What's going on?
I'll leave it with you.
Sure. Well, so it is amazing. For me, it was a little bit. Oh, here's what they're doing. I've been following this stuff a little bit behind the scenes. Azure, if you know what Azure Data Warehouse is all about, Azure Data Warehouse is a massively parallel data warehouse. It takes the concepts of SQL, but it's architected differently. SQL, you have to scale up, and this is designed to scale out like a Databricks is. Something of that nature. They have multiple nodes, and going back to our point of cost again. But now the storage was always decoupled, but the storage can now be traditional table storage or big data sources. So all of these highly performant Hadoop style file systems. So your data can be in just about any format. It doesn't really matter. It works with this stuff. So it's really I don't want to oversimplify it by saying it's a rebranding of Azure Data Warehouse. But it's Azure Data Warehouse. It's the next generation of Azure Data Warehouse is what it really is. And it is for truly massive petabyte scale data. You can, I had a conversation with the product team member in the pre-day. If you don't have petabytes of data, you can probably get away with just Azure SQL too. So the stuff that's happening in that area is exciting too. But Azure Synapse is phenomenal. And it just means there are no limits to where you can scale your data.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's cool. And it was a really cool demo, right, of walking through doing all that in Azure and bringing in those data sources.
They
and
make it
writing
easy. They
queries
make
on
it
the fly.
approachable.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I haven't said this out loud, so let's see how this rolls out of my brain. You made a comment earlier about the fact that there's not a whole lot of dev happening at this show. This show really feels, the more and more I sit through and I watch, I see what's going on. The keynote was massively Azure.
Mm-hmm.
It was the first hour and 15 minutes was everything that had the name Azure in it.
Yep.
Now the keynote went long, right? It was supposed to be an hour and 15 minutes.
And it was almost 2 hours.
It was almost 2 hours. They added on an additional set, but an hour and 15 minutes of pure, let's talk about Azure things. It feels like Ignite is becoming Azure Ignite. And that is the main, it feels like the main focus. Now there's plenty of other content here because there's so much stuff, but the announcements are massively Azure focused.
Sure.
And this is another thing that takes and elevates, from the Power BI world and from the SQL world to now there's this next level of thing goes into Azure and becomes an Azure thing. So it's just one of, as I started to look at it, I was like, is this really the self-service world that I play in when it comes to Power BI? No, it's really not. This is truly enterprise-grade BI that takes what Power BI does for an enterprise-grade level thing and takes it to that 10th degree, that next level thing.
It's the grow-up story.
Yeah.
Because you can start with the tools, the self-serve BI, move that up to the departmental stuff. And then if it truly scales out, you've got the tools, you're covered. You can do this no matter.
Well, the problem has traditionally been with that enterprise story that before you can even start to crunch a single line of data, you have to spend millions of dollars on infrastructure before you can get there. And it takes years to get all that set up. Now you flip the switch, it's on it, and you can turn it up and down as you need it. Right?
Ours don't go to 11.
No, you
Ours
can't
go to 111.
You can't predict what it's going to cost. That's impossible.
That's right.
But you can turn it on and off when you need it.
The reality is that you're out of 100 people, 99 of them are never going to touch or see Azure Synapse.
If you're going to need it, you can probably afford it.
Yeah. But the one person that it's for, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be for a lot of folks, but I'm just saying it is not the broadest use case.
Sure. You don't have to worry about hitting your head on the ceiling like I did.
One of John White's favorites, the decomposition tree.
I'll let Jace take this one.
Yeah, so the decomposition tree, this was the last holdover before we could put a bullet in the head of Performance Point. This was the last thing that was holding out. And when Microsoft did this, and we've sat down with Justina Lisnick. Did I say it right?
I can't judge.
Okay. She's amazing. She's a really smart lady. We sat down with her and said, "We're so happy that you brought this feature." And she said, "Yeah, but it's not the way you think it is." Well, what do you mean? It's all AI backed. It's all based in machine learning and AI. It is not your standard decomposition tree.
Really?
When you look at the flow of when you look at the demo, it is intuitive. It's intuiting things for you, and it's laying things out. This is all based on a bunch of new AI ML stuff that they just brought out. What was it, 3 months ago? They brought it to GA.
Yeah.
AutoML was one, and that came out this month.
They brought the influencer visual to GA,
Well,
and this based on some of the same
second version
backend.
of it,
Yeah.
So I mean, it's all really super cool AI stuff. That the Q&A feature that they just got that fully out. And this was following on with all of that. So you're actually able to go in and tie in. I mentioned about the Office ribbon and stuff like that, the synonyms functionality and all of those things that help tie these things together and be able to say, hey, here's how these things should flow. It's not just in the data, it's actually in the intelligence as well.
Interesting.
I'll give you an example. Classic decomposition tree with Performance Point. I've got a chart. I want to drill into this particular data point, and I want to pivot on a different dimension, right? And I just go in there and say, okay, this dimension. Oh, that didn't do anything. I go back, see a different dimension. Okay, that didn't go back. This decomp tree, I've got my decomp tree laid out. I can right click on the data element. It will say this dimension seemed to have the most effect on this. Let's break it down that way. So it's giving you a recommendation.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah. Wow.
It's brilliant.
Wow.
Okay. So I was a doubter on some of this stuff for a while, and I had to apologize to her in our interview. Be like, I was wrong. You guys.
That was Q&A.
nailed this.
That's question natural language query.
Okay.
That's
I've
where the
always-
thesaurus stuff comes in.
Ah.
So when I ask a question,
Yeah,
now
I
it
was
knows
skeptical
what I
of
mean instead of having to build my own thesaurus and
Got
of
it.
what my column names are matched up to English language. It's using literally the Office thesaurus now.
Okay.
This is exciting.
Wow.
Can you tell?
That's pretty
Super
cool.
stuff. Yes.
Well, I knew John was excited about it when he saw the slides from earlier. He started jumping up and down like, dude, calm down. It's
I do that a lot.
All right. Automated ML, you mentioned some of this is been talked about before, but this is a pretty cool feature.
It's very, very cool. So one of the things, why does it belong in Power BI? Why is it in Power BI? One of the biggest challenges in any machine learning model build is wrangling your data. It's getting your data in the right shape. Well, what's Power Query good at? Exactly that. So by adding this on to, it's a data flows feature. By adding that on there, we basically can go to our data, build a machine learning model very easily. I want to build a new model to predict this field. Oh, it will recommend algorithms. It would appear that this sort of an algorithm is the sort of thing you can do. Let's do that. And it will go off and split your data into this like a 70-30 split for learning and training and testing and all of that. And it will come up with a model you could then apply to your data flow to predict values. So you might have new data coming in and it will be able to add in the predictive values. But the really cool thing about this is those models can be exported to Azure and used through web services. So you can build a machine learning model with Power BI and then use this as an application later on.
Oh.
And I like the fact that there's a lot of machine teaching that you can do with all of this stuff as well, which means that while you're creating an AutoML model, you have the ability to go in and say, no, train this way. We want to. That's not quite right. Here's how we.
So it
want
makes
it
a
to
suggestion. You refine it, change it, right? And then does
every
the
refresh,
others
you can retrain.
Okay, so the other recommendations then are going to be based on the changes that you made, right? As you're going.
Yep.
You're getting some questions in there, I think.
I am. So Tom is asking. He works for a television network. They have petabytes of video and audio. How can they work with that? Probably with Azure, I would assume. But what tools are available that would help them manage that kind of data? Because that's all what we would call unclassified, uncategorized data, right? So
let's take the example of video. What you would do, there's not really a lot from a BI standpoint you're going to do with that, but you might run, if you were using something like Stream can bring a transcription.
Azure Media Services. Let's go with that. They're not going to use Stream terabytes of data.
That's true.
But same concept. Yeah.
Fair enough, but be able to pull out a transcript of the line. Now with the text, what can we do with that? We could literally analyze the text for occurrence of words, that, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, Azure Media Services has a ton of instrumentation. We use that with Training Plus, and we can't even scratch the surface of the analytics that it's giving us. So if you could, we're just theorizing.
Yeah.
That if you were to take that broadcast and you were to funnel it through Azure Media Services, right, then all of a sudden you have these automated analytics that are getting generated. You could put those into a data warehouse, right, and now you have actionable data that you can drill down, look at. You can break apart all that stuff.
Precisely.
You could put Power BI. First, you have to collect the data.
Yeah.
Well, you can do that automatically. Azure Media Services does that. You can put it directly into Azure SQL if you want, or you can even put it into
Data Lake.
Yeah, any of those, and then you can build those reports on top of that. Now, that requires, I understand how their system works, so that will require some changes to what they do. They have a broadcast network that even Microsoft would go, whoa, that's impressive. But back to my earlier point, the tooling for them to build that tooling would require resources, personnel. Someone have to come in and design it, build it, buy it, build it, deploy it. It would take years for them to do that. Whereas with all of these things in Azure, they can just plug in what they're doing, right? And you have all those tools available to you.
So Azure Media Service, I'm assuming, I haven't used it. I'm assuming one of the output formats for it would be a data lake or a blob storage. I mean, that's good primitive.
Yep.
If we want to, Power BI can just collect to that and we pull that in. Now, scale may mean we want to do that a little more structurally, but proof of concept, we can get up and running and then refine, and scale. So it gets us going fast.
The machine learning models give you that nice ability to go and point it and go.
So one of the things that I know they do is live on-demand translation, because they broadcast to 70 plus something countries, or it may even be more than that. So if you're streaming that through Cognitive Services, right, with Azure Media Services, you can plug that in. You can do the live translation. What did they call it this week? Live annotation or what?
I missed that.
They're for the stuff that they're doing for all the video broadcasts here, right? They're all pulling it all through there, and they've got a feature in Azure that does exactly that. I forget, they mentioned it earlier, but it's there.
PowerPoint does it.
And so you just immediately get that translation, right? And it's just part of the service. So there's some pretty cool stuff there. All right, let's I'm not speaking of cognitive services. That was a great segue. Lots of good connections now between Cognitive Services and Power BI.
Well, again, this is something we've seen in data flows. We've had the ability to call out to Cognitive Services to do something like sentiment analysis or key phrase extraction on data, so I could pass in a text field and get a score back or a list of values, which I could then pivot on and relate to, et cetera, et cetera. That's been in data flows. As of, I guess it's next week. We've got the ability to do that in Power BI Desktop as well. Now, to do that, you're going to have to connect to a dedicated capacity, because the key thing to know about that is if you've used Cognitive Services, you're going to worry about, all right, where do I put in my credit card? Is it going to get cost? Because every time you pull in the data, you're going to be making those calls, so it's going to cost you every time. That's what you would think. That's not how it works. They've taken the Cognitive Services machine learning models from Azure and put them directly in the dedicated capacity. So it's you're running your CPU cycles, but it's not costing you per transaction.
Okay.
So you can go ahead and do that. When you do it in Power BI Desktop, you can deploy that out, and it's just going to work. It's cool.
Yeah. So that's a great way to take advantage of those, all that gives you. And when you start digging deep on that Cognitive Services stuff, I was sitting here working the other day, and I was just glanced up at there, and they were talking about Lewis and all this stuff that they're doing behind the scenes with all that natural language stuff, and it's pretty crazy. I remember we went and sat at the MVP Summit, didn't we? We went and sat in one of those sessions, and the depth of knowledge that these people have about neurolingual processing and all the it's amazing stuff what's going on behind the scenes there. So that's Cognitive Services. Now, this is one that I left the slide in. We're a little fuzzy on exactly what's going to happen here, but there was an announcement about greater Teams integration, but there wasn't a lot of specifics in there. So What's your
what they said
hot
was
take
that there
on
is any improvement to the Teams integration is always a good thing, because people are using it and seeing that they were one of the first. Power BI was one of the early on ones to get out there. And part of the reason, and we actually talked to Arun about this, part of the reason why was because the Teams team went and built it. And they've turned around, and now Teams is massively exploding, as we all know. Power BI is as well, but they've started to sort of catch up. And so the Teams team came back and said, "Can you take over the code base for your implementation of this? Everybody else is. We built it to get you guys in there early because we wanted to capture that lightning in a bottle. But now we're getting busy. Can you improve upon it?" So that's exactly what they did. Was they took it over and they went, "Oh wow, that's how you did that. Okay, that's a way of doing it.
That's one way.
But we've done all of this other stuff. Let's redo that." And so sometime early, I don't remember whether it was H1 or Q1 of calendar year 2020 is when they've talked about bringing the new version out
Of the tab.
of the tab and giving us more stuff to
It'll fundamentally do the same thing. You'll be able to put a report in a tab in Teams. The act of doing so is going to be significantly easier.
Gotcha.
So you've got all these artifacts all over the place. It's kind of hard to scroll through them today, and the new tab's going to fix
The
it.
question that we get asked regularly about this, because this is something that are we? It's not specifically about the announcement, but are we going to see dashboards come to Teams?
That's exactly what I was about to ask you.
We don't know.
Yeah, we have no idea. That's not So there. I know that's been a user voice item that's been asked for.
That's really kind of the killer feature, isn't it?
I've heard that we'll be able to access workspaces from Teams,
Okay.
but I do not know.
Yeah, whether that means you'll be able to get to the dashboard as well, just unclear at this
You would
point.
think so, yeah.
But we know it's something that's been asked for a lot.
I would love to have dashboards on the main team page. As soon as you hit at the conversation page, I'd have a bar on the right or something with a bunch of dashboards that I could.
When you click
plug
on the
in.
team name, you don't expect just this conversation to collapse?
I would like more data than that.
I
But
will-
think about the way that we're kind of rebuilding SharePoint sites here, aren't we? But think about what we used to do, right? We'd take contextual data for that project or whatever, that team, and we would show it on the landing page. From there, you could dig down into other stuff. So I'm great with having that conversation still leading the way. But if I could surface data that's focused to that team and what they're working on, like pull it out of Azure DevOps or some other channel.
Did you notice earlier I said Tygraph makes a product for Teams?
Yeah, but can you put it
Stay
on that?
tuned.
Okay, more to come. Watch this space.
So the thing that I will say about Power BI that we like, we're very lucky we have access to the product team. But the cool thing is that everybody really does. Ideas.powerbi.com, that they go in and look at that stuff. When things get a decent number of votes, and we're not talking 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 votes, we're talking 50 to 100 votes. They actually pay attention. They start looking at those and track whether or not people are coming in and adding on to that. And that's why one of the things we started doing in our show back, it's been since March, is we do user voice picks every show. Well, except for shows that Ignite.
Except for these ones.
We've been a little bit overwhelmed with this week. But we always do user voice picks to try and make sure people know, hey, and we get stuff from our community. They email us and say, hey, we highlight this one as well, because the team really does go off and look at it, listen to it, and they care. They want to make things better for the people who are taking the time to put those things in. So if you have something, make sure you go out to ideas.powerbi.com and go out, vote for things. That's the best way. And then if you have something that's not there, go put it in and then tweet us it, and we'll go help support it.
Love it. All right. So I don't actually have anything on the list.
All of that to say, I would not be surprised at all if at some point we see dashboards show up in there. It wouldn't surprise me, because it's something that people have been asking for. And that's one of the things that the team really does care about. They know where their bread is buttered, who pays their bills.
Right. Okay. So let's put a wrap on in the last couple of minutes that we have left. What from the things that were announced here and going forward, we've now got this space between Ignite, which is big announcements and almost demoware type of stuff. And then let's bring it back down to the Office perspective. Then we go to SPC and we see things actually shipping and working, and we get demos and that sort of stuff. What are the immediate things between now and SPC that you're looking forward to seeing and getting your hands on?
So before we do that, I want to say one thing, and hopefully your audience has heard this already. There was this whole thing about Power Platform being able to be bought without IT involvement, just stick a credit card number in there. I assume that your audience may or may not have heard this. They rolled that decision back. Sort of. Yeah, sort of. What they did was they came back and it was supposed to go live on like November 14th, which would have been next Thursday. Without any controls for IT, just a flat out, hey, people can just go do this. There was a user voice item that got something like 6,000, 7,000 votes.
Last one I saw was almost 7,000 on that one.
And that was in 8 days. They listened, they saw it, and they went, okay, this really upsets people. They didn't expect it to upset people that much. So what they did was they rolled the decision back and said, we're going to pause. We're going to do this at the beginning of January. And in between now and then, we're going to go write you the ability in PowerShell to go turn this off. So they're going to give admins the capability of doing exactly what people asked for.
That's exactly what they wanted in the admin center. But if it goes into PowerShell, it'll make its way.
It gives them the ability to turn it up. That was all that people really say. Of course, they want a toggle button, but PowerShell's good enough at least to start. Say, you know what? We want the ability to turn this off for the enterprise. And that only happened. The only reason why that's happening is because people went out there and they voted for the user voice item that Veronique Palmer actually submitted into the Office one. So they're looking cross-platform and seeing, because they're totally different user voice. That one's an Office 365 user voice. But they paid attention, and that was across the entire Power Platform.
Now imagine, let's roll it back to 2010, right? Imagine something shipped with 2010 like that we absolutely hated and everybody got upset about. Right? It takes 3 years, at a minimum, 1.5 years to get a service pack to implement a change like that, right? This change happened in days.
Yes.
Well, in fact, it prevented the change from happening in the first place because there was the communication.
When does that ever happen?
Yeah, it doesn't. And I know people get frustrated by, just go to the user voice, just go to the user voice. But now some teams are better than others, but they actually are looking at that stuff.
And user voice isn't the be all and end all, but when product team members are soliciting people to go and vote for items, that they've got value, right? There's a reason for that. It's because it gives them weight when they have the community. I've got a particular feature that I'll leave the details in the person alone, but I'm talking to somebody on the Power BI team, and he's yep. You're right. That's a valid feature, but enough people just aren't asking for it. Yeah, it's because they don't know they can have it.
Yeah,
but that's a bit of a trap too. But I want to underscore the importance of user voice,
like dark mode for Power BI Desktop.
Yep. Well,
go vote for that. I need some dark mode for Power BI Desktop. Go out there and vote for it. I need it. It's killing me. That's what I'm looking forward to.
That's it. That's the one you're looking for. Dark mode. Okay, got it.
Dark mode.
Your question is from the announcements here. What am I most excited to see, say, by the SharePoint conference?
Yeah.
And it does narrow down to Office, and I have a hard time with that one with things in the Power BI space because I kind of know exactly how it's laid out. And it's boom, 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 which is a good thing. Cortex.
Yeah.
It's got to be Cortex because that thing is cool. I think it can done right. It looks like it's done right. It can be a game changer. The one, and it's not really Cortex. Cortex is a lot bigger than this, but the demo with the documents and the training the model that way, that's ICR democratized. And ICR has been around 25 years, where you want to be able to look at a document, recognize that it's an invoice, pull out these numbers and use it in a ERP system or whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's going to work. This looks like it's for real and it's easy and anybody can do it. Just that part of it, I find exciting. So yeah, I'm excited about that.
I have two.
Besides dark mode.
Yes. That was just the Power BI side. Hubs connect to hubs. I think it's going to be a really good thing. That's very exciting. But personally, I like to tell a story. A couple of years ago at MVP Summit, they sat down, the Office team sat down, I think it was the Word team, and said, tell us all the things that you wish that we would do. And at the end of it, they scored it out. And 97% of what we all asked for in that room were already in the product. Already there. They just hadn't surfaced it right. It wasn't something that, and that's why we now have this big search box at the top of Word, PowerPoint, Excel. I'm excited for the fact that there's been so much improvement, so many things that they're doing better and right inside of SharePoint at this point. If we're just talking SharePoint, I just want to see people leveraging that which is there and using it better. And the adoption story, because people are coming through Teams, they're seeing things in a different way. And the private channels thing that got announced this week, that's all going GA at this point, all of that, people are coming to SharePoint in a different way now. And maybe things aren't exactly the way we think that they should be long term, but they're agile enough that they're going to be able to do more with it. I'm looking forward to people really getting to dig in, because people are coming back to the platform in a way that they haven't. I'm seeing people flock back, where it used to be, I don't want to hear the word SharePoint. Now SharePoint is no longer a dirty word. And that's something I think is really cool. I'm looking forward to a nice wave of that.
Resurgence, as it were. Well, that's fantastic. Well, listen, we are out of time. And so I want to thank our guests, Jason and John, of course, as
We
always,
hated every minute of it.
for joining us. It's a shame I can't get these guys to just extemporate on things. I have to prompt them for every single thing they're going to say. It's like pulling teeth in here. But most especially, I want to thank all of you who joined us live. I know a lot of you are going to be watching this webcast after the fact, which is great as well. Please feel free to give us feedback on the YouTube channel. There on the various webcasts, we'll try and do our best to monitor those. If you need to get in touch with Jason or John, you want to know more about Power BI, reach out to us through the DFWSharePoint.com website, and we will be happy to make the connection for you. So we're signing off now from Ignite 2019 live. I am absolutely exhausted and I need a nap. So thank you all for joining us for this entire week. We appreciate it, and we will see you back at Big D very soon.